asleep in the lab. I woke up on a slab, so
Yeah, guys, so just before I begin, my reference and my source is ygeoscope.com. Again, it's a dueling book website. It's a website based off of dueling book where a lot of the numbers that come in every day, I think it's uploaded every 24 hours or even probably more frequent than that onto their servers. And those numbers pretty much break down all of the numbers on the daily, whether it be a deck, whether it be a specific card within a game or within a match. They're definitely showing numbers than they're daily updated. I know daily, but it might be more frequent than that. So getting into the actual content, I wanted to start with Red Reboot. Simply, I just kind of wanted to go down the numbers all the way down. It'll kind of shock you. I'm not gonna lie. You're gonna be shocked by at least one of these. I know. Red Reboot has a 60% winning percentage and has a count that's well over 650 times. And count basically means how many times it's used within a match or how many times it's used within a single game. For me, I'm speaking on inside of a match, so the best 2 out of 3 games. Moving down the list, evenly matched at 57% with a count that's well over 2,500. It's actually 2,969 at the time of making this video. You would ask yourself, what makes such a huge number discrepancy? Well, obviously, if you've played the game for a little bit and you haven't been under a rock, you would know that Red Reboot is at 1 and evenly matched is at 3. So evenly matched is definitely going to have the higher count compared to Red Reboot. However, Red Reboot's winning percentage is higher at 60%. Now, obviously, that's because the number is skewed because it's a lot lower, and over time it may come down a little bit. However, I actually believe the Red Reboot is insane, and that's why it's at 1. That's just common sense, I guess. When we move on to Harpy's Feather Duster, it's used over 5,613 times, and it also has a 57% winning percentage. So evenly matched and Harpy's Feather Duster literally have the exact same winning percentage, although Harpy's Feather Duster is used a lot more. So here's another number discrepancy. Evenly matched is used 2,969 times versus Harpy's Feather Duster that's 5,613 times. However, it's a one of. So what that's showing is that Harpy's Feather Duster is used in a lot more decks than, say, a card like a Red Reboot. It's used a hell of a lot more, and they're both at 1, Harpy's Feather Duster versus the Red Reboot. Now, don't get me wrong, guys, 57% winning percentage is really high for a generic card. Usually when you see numbers this high, they usually are directly tied to an archetype. So that shows you the simple power level to these cards. The shock starts to come into me, and this is just my opinion, the shock starts to come into me with Lightning Storm being at 56% at 7,099, and Pankratops being also at 56% with a number of 5,052. The Lightning Storm number, there's 2 things that shock me. The first being that it's actually lower than evenly and lower than Harpy's Feather Duster. I thought complete Red Geki or a complete Harpy's Feather Duster, but obviously the face-up restriction definitely impacts what you're trying to do if you are playing Lightning Storm, and it kind of limits certain decks, like let's say Drytron. You can't afford to play Lightning Storm. You need to play a card that can actually answer problem cards like Shaddoll Schism, for example. However, that high number, 7,000 times, so it's used more than any of these on this list. It's used more than any of them. However, its number is lower. So yes, it's being used a lot more. So that may skew the number, and 1% isn't too much. I would pretty much say that's dead even. However, when it gets to be about 2, I think that's a pretty big variation over a lot of games. That's just my humble opinion. The Pankratops being used over 5,000 times, it lets you know that Pankratops is an extremely powerful card. It's always going to pull something down with it, and that's why a lot of people love it. Whether it's playing it into an Altergeist board, they have to respond to it, and it's going to take an interaction with it, and it's probably going to take another card with it as well, unless the card is just totally unable to be affected by a card. That pretty much is going to boil down to all the cards that are pretty much listed, except for Twin Twister, which is the shock to me, with Twin Twister only having a 49% winning percentage, and it's used in 1,583 games. So that means it's actually not used as many times as some of these other decks, because I think sometimes if you're playing a Backrow deck like Subterra Guru, you can't afford to discard a card. And decks like that, so on and so forth. Combo decks usually can because they need to, because they have to chain to something. But Twin Twister having a low winning percentage of 49% compared to something like Red Reboot being 60%, that means the Twin Twister maybe isn't all it's cracked up to be. To round this last little bit off, guys, with Denko, some of the other cards that come to mind, Denko Sekka, Cosmic Cyclone at the time of making this video also had a 55% winning percentage, but I feel like it's right in there with the other ones. Denko, MST, Jinzo, a tech that we're going to have next week, Spiritualism, that we're going to have a deep dive into it because the card is nuts. And then other cards, the irrelevant cards like Galaxy Cyclone, it's used a little bit more. Night Beam is another card that would come to mind. Some of these aren't really listed, but it's pretty much how they boil down to you. The problem with Denko, and a card like Jinzo too. I love Jinzo. Jinzo's my favorite card in the game. Denko's one of my favorite cards as well. However, the problem is that it plays into a powerful card like Nibiru, a powerful card like Solemn Judgment. And if you use a summon, if you normal summon a Denko and it gets stopped and you can't afford your normal summon, it's not a good idea, in my humble opinion, to waste that. Now, if you're playing a deck like Infernoids, you don't really care about your normal summon at all, unless you're summoning the Decatron, then yeah, have at it, boss. Normal summon the Denko and try to go for it. If they stop it, then they've just wasted a pretty valuable card in the Solemn Judgment. Or you can just probably negate the Nibiru that they have in their hand with the Deviati. I'm just using Infernoids as an example. But in, let's say, a combo deck like Drytron, that's just not that good because, well, you don't want to lose your summon. You just don't want to lose the card. And then on top of that, you want to be able to chain something to something, because Winda is a problem card for Drytron. I think that's a pretty obvious statement for anybody that plays inside of this metagame. Jinzo just isn't, unless cards truly need to, it's not even that good in a format with stuff like Altergeist, Guru, and Eldritch. So I don't think it could ever really be that good until it gets its own deck that's actually on a meta level. The last support was kind of awful, not to get too far off topic. But I think that pretty much rounds out everything I wanted to talk about. MST also isn't listed. MST, if a deck like Sky Striker Full Power ever comes back, or cards need to float and you can also be in a back row type of format, then MST will definitely make a comeback. It also may be something that you want to think about for a deck that you may be playing now. This is Big Greg Farley, aka Pegasus from the Wise Guys, signing out. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm out. YG baby.